Well, these days, everyone's got a video camera, either outright or built into their mobile devices. But there have been frequent incidents where pointing those devices at police officers to capture their actions has gotten people arrested and their devices destroyed. Well, here in the U.S., there's a little something called the Constitution, specifically the First Amendment right to freedom of expression, or free speech as it's often called. But it has limitations. Here to explain the current Supreme Court fight over the issue is Barbara Moses, visiting clinical professor at Seton Hall University Law School. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
This has been an ongoing issue for several years, ever since, of course, the poster child of police abuse, the Rodney King beating video. Police officers have actually confiscated cameras, and that's been an ongoing thing. Is there actually a First Amendment protection when you're taping police doing their thing?
There is, and it's becoming increasingly clear that this kind of activity, videotaping or recording the police when they're on duty in a public place, is protected by the First Amendment. Within the last 2 years, 2 of the federal courts of appeals have decided cases involving this very issue, and they've both held that yes, the First Amendment does protect this type of activity.
So why the challenge from police agencies? We've seen this over and over and over. What's the basis for their challenge?
Well, police have historically not liked to be videotaped, and it may just be force of habit. It makes them uncomfortable, perhaps. But I think if they were to step back and take the longer view, they would realize that allowing the public to videotape public officers, after all, performing a public duty in public, benefits both the police and the public. Obviously, it benefits the public when cases of police misconduct are taped, but it also benefits the police, and it allows them to show that charges of misconduct are unfounded, when in fact they are unfounded. In addition, I think, taking the longer view, it enhances public confidence in the courts when criminal cases or civil cases where police and civilians disagree, when those cases have video evidence which makes it clear what actually happened.
Certainly. And obviously a lot of police agencies depend on this. They put video cameras in police cars in agencies across the country.
That's an excellent point. Not only do the police often put video cameras in cars, but they also send video crews to record demonstrations and protests and other events that are likely to generate controversy. So it really only seems fair that members of the public should be able to do the same thing.
Certainly. Now, you mentioned the Illinois case. What's the outcome of that?
Well, the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the federal court covering Illinois and a number of other Midwestern states, decided very clearly and expressly last year that an Illinois statute which purportedly made it a crime to record the police without their consent, even in a public place, is unconstitutional. So that case is now on the books. A somewhat similar case from a Massachusetts federal appeals court the year earlier came to a similar conclusion. So we now have 2 important federal appellate decisions supporting your First Amendment right to videotape or record the police when they're on duty in a public place.
I think there was a similar one where there was a girl on a bus in Florida who did the same thing, and the police officers confiscated her video.
Yes. In fact, my clinic at Seton Hall Law School sued the police department in Newark, New Jersey in just such a case. Our client was a 16-year-old girl who took out her cell phone to record police activity on a New Jersey transit bus. Next thing she knew, she was in handcuffs in the back of a police car. Luckily, she knew her rights. She brought a civil rights suit, and I will say this for the Newark Police Department, like many other police departments, they are now stepping up to the plate. They have issued a new policy making it clear to their officers that folks do have a First Amendment right to record police activity in a public place, and hopefully we won't see cases like that anymore, at least not in Newark, New Jersey.
Has that case been resolved yet, or you're still in the courts?
That case has been resolved by settlement, but even before the case was resolved, to the credit of the Newark Police Department, they went ahead and issued the new policy and started training their officers on it.
Now, based on what we're seeing, what do you tell people, even whether they're your clients or whether they're people who are, out there with their cell phones and iPads and what have you? What do you tell people in terms of how they videotape? Are there cautionary things they need to do, or is this just I can take pictures whenever and wherever I want?
Well, there are some common sense cautions. First of all, you can't commit a crime or be someplace where you would otherwise not be entitled to be merely because you happen to have a cell phone camera. So, for example, if you are behind a crime scene tape, you can't cross over that tape just because you happen to be carrying a camera. But if you are in a place where you are otherwise entitled to be, and if you're not breaking any other law, you are entitled to take out your camera, take out your cell phone, take out your video recorder, whatever it is, and make a record of whatever it is that you can see or you can hear from wherever it is that you are legally standing.
And how should you effectively respond to police officers when they say, hey, get that camera out of here?
Well, now we're getting into the realm of, shall we say, practical politics. I mean, I think that depends on where you are and who you're with and how much risk you're personally prepared to take in order to make the point. Certainly, you have that constitutional right. It may not always be the smartest thing in the world to insist on it at that very moment.
So it's always a judgment call.
It is.
Barbara Moses, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.